All right, so today we're talking about literal equations and dimensional analysis. So we are going to solve equations for given variables, and we're going to use formulas to solve real-world problems. All right, so each year more people use credit cards to make everyday purchases. If the entire balance is not paid by the due date, compound interest is applied. The formula for computing the balance of an account with compound interest added annually is A equals P times the sum of 1 and R to the T power. A represents the amount of money in the account including the interest. P is the amount in the account before interest is added. R is the interest rate written as a decimal, and T is the time in years. So some equations, such as the one that I just told you about, contain more than one variable. At times, you will need to solve these equations for one of the variables. So for example, I have solved 2x minus 4y equals 8 for y. So we're wanting to solve for y. Well, we have to move everything else from the left-hand side of the equation to the right hand of the equation until I only have y equals. So what I would do is I would take, first thing I would do is 2x, I would subtract 2x, and that would give me negative 4y, and then on the other side I would have 8 minus 2x. Now negative 4y is multiplication, so the opposite is division, so I would divide both sides by negative 4, and y equals 8 minus 2x over negative 4, or I could rewrite that as 2x minus 8 over 4, okay? All right. So let's try solving each equation for the variable indicated. So if I have k minus 2 over 5 equals 11j, and I want to solve for k. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to multiply both sides by 5 to get rid of the denominator. So 5 times k minus 2 over 5 equals 5 times 11j. That's going to give me k minus 2, because my 5's will cross out or simplify down, and that's going to equal 55j. I then have to add 2 to both sides in order to get rid of the negative 2, and that's going to give me k equals 55j plus 2. All right, now let's look at the next one. I have 8 times the difference of q and 8 equals 23. We are to solve for q. Okay? So the first thing I want to do is I want to get rid of that a. Well, that's multiplication. So the first thing I'm going to do is to divide both sides by a. And the a's will simplify out and leave me with q minus 8 equals 23 divided by a. Okay? Now I'm going to add 8 to both sides, and that's going to leave me with q equals 23 over a plus 8. Okay? And that would be the answer. All right, sometimes we need to solve equations for a variable that is on both sides of the equation. When this happens, you must get all the terms with the variable onto one side of the equation. It is then helpful to use the distributive property to isolate the variable for which you are solving. So for example, we have to solve 3m minus n equals k times m minus 8, and we're solving for m. And there is an m on both sides of the equation, okay, or both sides of the equal sign. So I just need to start picking it apart and getting rid of things that I don't need. So for example, I am going to subtract. In this example, they combine two steps into one. I'm going to, let's see. Actually, they're moving everything over. So we're going to, since this is Km, we are going to subtract Km from both sides. That's going to leave me with negative 8 on the right side, and that's going to give me 3m minus n minus k times m. Okay? Then I am going to get rid of the n by adding n to both sides, and that's going to give me 3m minus km equals negative 8 plus m. Now you can see right here we have 3m minus km. So there's an m in both of those terms. So I can factor out an m. So if I factor out an m of 3m, that leaves me with just 3. If I factor out an m from k, that leaves me with k. So I have 3 times the difference of 3 and k. And again, you can check that. You can distribute. 3 times m is 3m. m times negative k would be negative km. Okay? Now, I can simply divide by the by the 3 minus k, which would simplify down and give me just m. And then I would do the same thing on the other side, so I end up with negative 8 plus n divided by 3 minus k, or I could rewrite that to make it a little bit easier and be n minus 8 divided by 3 minus k. Either one of those works. Okay? All right. And so the value of m is n minus 8 over 3 minus k, as long as k does not equal 3. Okay? Because obviously you can't divide by 0. It's undefined. All right. So here's a couple for you to try. You have 2a and 2b. So let's see. What are we going to do? We're solving for d on the first one. So we can, let's subtract a d from both sides. That's going to move the variable we're looking for to one side. So that's 5c equals 2d minus 1. So then we would add 1 to both sides. And that's going to give me 5c plus 1 equals 2d. Then I divide both sides by 2, and that's going to give me 5c plus 1 divided by 2 equals d. Okay? Now let's look at the next one. We're solving for q. So what I can do is I can subtract qr. And that's going to give me 6q minus 18 minus qr equals t. Then I can add 18. And that's going to give me 6q minus qr equals t plus 18. Now, both of my terms have a q in it, so I can factor out a q. When I factor the q out, that leaves me with 6 minus r equals t plus 18. And then I would just divide by 6 minus r. They simplify out. And that leaves me with q equals t plus 18 over 6 minus r. Okay? Or of course you could have 18 plus t over 6 minus r. Okay. So now we're going to use formulas. An equation that involves several variables is called a formula, or a literal equation. To solve a literal equation, apply the process of solving for a specific variable. So let's look at this problem, yo-yos. Use the information about the largest yo-yo at the left. The formula for the circumference of a circle is c equals 2 times pi times r, where c represents the circumference, r represents the radius. So the first says solve for r. So if I'm to solve for r, all I need to do is isolate r. So I need to remove the 2 times pi. Well, all that's multiplication, so I would use division. I divide both sides by 2 times pi, and r would equal c divided by 2 times pi. Now it wants me to find the radius for the yo-yo. So it looks like the yo-yo, the circumference is 32.7. Then all I would do is take 32.7 divided by 2 times pi, or 2 times, I could use pi in the calculator or round it to 3.14, and it's going to be approximately 5.2 or 5.2 feet. Okay, so once I rearrange the equation to what I'm looking for, then I can plug in the information and make it a little bit easier. Okay, so let's look at this one. It says the formula for the volume of a rectangle prism is V equals length times width times height, where L is length, W is width, and H is height. Solve the formula for W. So we need to know what W is first. So L, W, H. We're looking for W. So all I have to do is to divide off the L and the H. Divide the L and the H, because it's all multiplication. So that's going to give me V divided by L times H equals W. Okay? Now it wants to find the width of the rectangular prism if the volume is 79.04 cubic centimeters and the length is 5.2 centimeters and the height is 4 centimeters. Well, all I have to do is go 79.04 divided by 5.2 times 4 would be 20.8, and that's going to give me 3.8 or 3.8 centimeters. Okay? And that's how you would solve that. When using formulas, you may want to use dimensional analysis. Dimension analysis or unit analysis is the process of carrying units throughout a computation. So for example, a 10K run is 10 kilometers long. If 1 meter equals 1.094 yards, use dimensional analysis to find the length of the race in miles. All right, since we are given conversion relates meters to yards, first convert 10 kilometers to meters, then multiply by the conversion factor such that the unit meters are divided out. To convert from yards to miles, multiply by 1 mile to every 1,760 yards. So the way I'd set this up is kilometers times, there's 1,000 meters to 1 kilometer, times 1.094 yards to every meter, and then I can multiply that times 1 to every 1,760 yards. And you'll see when I do that, that would be kilometers would cross out, meters would cross out, yards would cross out, and so all that leaves me with is miles. And when I do that, I just simply multiply straight across, and I get 10,940 miles divided by 1,760, which would give me approximately 6.2 miles. Okay? So the last one, a car travels a distance of 100 feet in about 2.8 seconds. What is the velocity of the car in miles per hour, round to the nearest whole number? All right, try this and then come back and see how you did. Okay, let's see how you did. All right, so you would, as you can see here, you would do 100 feet over 2.8 seconds. you got to get the seconds to hours. So times 60 seconds over 1 minute times 60 minutes over 1 hour. And then get from feet to miles. You would say 1 mile over 5,280 feet. Then you would cross out feet, unit of measure, second, unit of measure, minute, unit of measure. And that only leaves you with mile on the top and hour on the bottom. And you would have 360,000 when you multiplied 100 times 60 times 1. And then when you multiply 2.8 times 1 times 1 times 5,280, you would get 14,784. And when you divided those two, you get approximately, it says round to the nearest whole number, so approximately 24 or 24 miles per hour. All right, thank you.